Morning, everybody. Just a note before we kick this all off. You want to go to slido.com if you have a question, or if you find that you have a question during our conversation. It's the best way to submit a question to us so that we can discuss it in the bottom half of our conversation. The code is hashtag SXSW, and the room is Salon H. Everybody got that? Great. We want you to participate. Nice to talk to you.
So great to be here.
We've had a great opportunity to chat over the last couple of weeks as well.
I've enjoyed it.
Talk about your background. I don't know that everybody knows you were really responsible for MoviePhone.
Well, no, I have to correct you on that. I ran it. I ran it well after some other people did the hard work of starting it. That's right. I worked at AOL for a long time.
You were really in tech, is what I'm saying.
Yes, and I worked at the part of AOL that ran media and products. I was in charge of programming and products there. I had a long career, did a lot of things, but that was my main job. Never on the side of AOL that ran the ISP business. I never shipped out discs. So, but I did manage all the content and services, including after we acquired it from the founders, MoviePhone, but also brands like MapQuest and ICQ and the AOL Instant Messenger. And combined, it was a great media portfolio. It was always secondary to the AOL's ISP business until broadband came along and AOL said, you know what, we have to get more into the services business. And we started to parlay those into content and services that were more advertising supported. Really, my career, I've just been doing the same thing over and over again. We're doing the modern version of that here with Vox Media, where we're focused on audiences across key categories of interest and deep passions. But I did something similar at AOL.
What brought you to Vox Media? What was the thing that was so compelling?
Well, I joined, it was SB Nation at the time, and SB Nation is our sports brand, and it's still one of the largest sports brands in media. It is also the largest sports brand in our portfolio. A lot of people don't know that. We call the company Vox Media, and we have a Vox brand in news, which is wonderful as well. But started out in sports, and what was unique about our sports model was we empowered people with voices, hence Vox, to talk about what they were passionate about, in their case, sports and the teams that they followed. And it was at a time where media was changing. People had Google, people were just starting to use Facebook, and it meant that they could follow the passions that they were interested in, not just sports, but a sports team and a sports player. And so we developed technology that served all of that, but we noticed that the internet was becoming more about driving people to what they care about and letting them do that also in real time, meaning the days of the daily news cycle were gone, and it was now a real-time news cycle. So we developed technology and a certain approach to do that. Part of that approach was hiring really talented people. And now if you fast forward to where we are, whether you care about restaurants in Austin, Texas with Eater, or whether you care about the latest smartphone with The Verge, or whether you care about healthcare policy with Vox, we get great talented voices who can inform and create community around those topics.
So walk us through the landscape that is Vox Media. What does it include, and really what's your business?
We consider ourselves the leading modern media company, and if we measure that by how, right now we probably have close to, in fact, over 500 million people who consume our content in one way, shape, or form. But it's multiple brands, and the voice rattled them off. But again, whether it's Polygon in entertainment, Verge in future in technology, Vox in explaining the news, Recode in tech and business, Curbed in neighborhoods and loving where you live, and of course Eater in food, and I mentioned SB Nation. You combine those all together, we touch on our own websites well over 100 million people per ComScore. But what we're trying to do is across multiple verticals, meaning different categories of interest, across multiple business models, and I know we're going to talk a lot about supporting this economically, and then across multiple different platforms too, whether it's programming on websites, whether it's programming on podcasts, whether it's programming on TV shows. We want to be where modern audiences are, telling them stories that are rooted in journalism, rooted in research and storytelling, rooted in subject matter expertise, and creating intellectual property from those stories that can live wherever audiences want to consume them.
So are you optimistic about media? And maybe a completely related but side question is optimistic about journalism? Are you optimistic about one and pessimistic about the other?
Believe it or not, I'm extraordinarily optimistic, and
CEOs always have to say that. They never
well,
say.
CEOs shouldn't be CEOs if they don't believe that. First of all, but I think it helps to really believe it, and I do, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there's never been a better time as a consumer of media to have choice, to have options, to consume in ways that fit your lifestyle, fit your ability to have access. And so for us, it always starts with this story and with the work. And then we build from the work. But I am optimistic. Now, I'm also realistic. And the real is less about the work, which has never been better. And of course, ours is the best. But it's not just about the work. It's about being realistic about the business models, too, that support the work. And in all of media, there is disruption and change, and you just have to look at the top of the food chain. Companies like Disney thinking that they don't have enough scale, so they have to buy companies like Fox. And I can say the same thing about AT&T and Time Warner, and I can say the same thing about Sky and Comcast. And Comcast is one of our investors. But if those companies feel like they have to run to change and adapt, imagine as you go on down, there isn't a media company in the world. I don't think there's a company in the world, to be honest, but certainly not a media company in the world that isn't feeling the pressure to change. Now, I think one of the things that we have working to our advantage is as we change, we are not beholden to an old way of doing things. We do not have a cable network to protect. We do not have a print newspaper or magazine to protect that is supplying us with all this cash flow. Cash flow is a good thing, except when the cash flow
And I was going to say, and you don't have a cable network to protect, and you don't
Precisely. Now, by the way, those are profitable businesses. The problem is that they're declining profitable businesses, and they take attention, and they also define your brand to a large degree. They define the way that you tell stories. And the formats. And so we have an advantage in that we can focus on the future. We can focus on what modern audiences need and want, and that's what we're committed to doing.
Is the future of journalism a good, positive future?
It is. Part of why I'm optimistic is that if I'm just looking at it coldly in terms of...
That was such a yes/no question, and you're still answering it.
Fair enough. Yes. Yes.
It is why, really.
No, see, you do want context.
I do.
I think it is a positive one. And the reason I think it is because if you just look at it coldly from supply demand, there is demand, there is need for quality journalism. There is more need than ever for quality journalism, not just from us as citizens and consumers and curious people, but from the distributors and the platforms, whether that platform is Netflix, whether that platform is YouTube, whether that platform is Twitter, there is a need for this. There is demand for this. Now, there's a massive disruption, and we'll talk about the business models, but it is, as long as there is need for journalism, and there always will be, as long as there is righteousness and curiosity in this world, then, and I am optimistic about that, then yes, it will be positive for journalism. Now, again, the realistic side, because I don't want to seem like I'm blowing smoke up here, the realistic side is that the business model is going through disruption that is caused from technological change. This might all sound obvious, but we consume media differently than we did, and the creative models are catching up to that. In fact, they've caught up, and I think we're leading the way there. But the business models are also catching up, and they're probably further behind the creative models. And again, I think we're onto something there as well, but there's a lot of work to be done.
So talk to me and walk us through the business model. What do you do that makes your business sustainable? And I know you also try to make sure you can license some of that off to others.
Well, yes, I'll get into it. Our business model, just to be simple about it, is diverse and growing, but it's growing in different ways. So first and foremost, we participate in advertising. That's the majority of where our revenue comes from. But even advertising is a lot of different types of advertising go into it. There's podcast advertising, there's video advertising, there is display advertising. We have a great unit called Vox Creative that works with marketers to help them tell their stories, and that's an important part of what we do. What binds it all together for us, though, is that it's premium quality, just like our storytelling, just like our content, every part of our business model. So we're not going after, like the clicks. We're going after, whether you're a marketer or whomever you are, we want to make sure that we help you tell your story in the right way, meaning safe, meaning engaging. And advertising is a big part of what we do. The second part of what we do is selling content and licensing it. And we have successful programming partnerships with Netflix and with YouTube and with Facebook and with PBS and with others and many more. That is a large and fast-growing part of our business. That's our Vox Media Studios business, and we do that with podcasts as well. And then we have a third part of our business where, as a technology-driven media company, we're able to license out our technology platform, the systems that allow us to create and distribute content and monetize that content. That business is called Chorus. And we have partners, including the Chicago Sun-Times and Deseret News and Funny or Die and The Ringer and others that license that platform, that Chorus platform from us. So
how does that help? Let's take the Chicago Sun-Times. What value add do you have for, a classic print business that is literally counting pennies and dimes and trying to figure out how to not lay off its staff?
I think about 10 years ago, with the rush to digital and the rush to internet, every content company thought they had to be a technology company. And they all invested in their own systems. Fast forward to today, every content company wants to be a content company, and they want to be able to make money, but the technology has gotten progressively harder, meaning you have to know how to publish across YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat and et cetera, and you have to be able to use data and workflow and tools to do that. That's just complex. We have a team of wonderful engineers and designers and product people that know how to do that very well. So we can come into a group like the Chicago Sun-Times that does outstanding journalism work and say, focus on journalism, focus on monetization, focus on the things that you do well. Let us handle this. And let us also help you make some more money too, because we have a product that helps you do that by helping you sell more premium advertising. That product's called Concert. But to zoom out a little bit, one of the things that we're doing that I'm really proud of and also happy about is that we are leveraging our legacy as an outstanding technology company to help support other media organizations that are going through this transition. Specifically, we support them with the technology products that are called Concert, which helps them monetize their premium advertising inventory better, and another one called Chorus, which provides them technology to manage their newsrooms and create content and distribute that content and use data in a consumer-friendly way to do that. So I'm hopeful that by leveraging the technology that we had to build for our business, we can also help broader industry opportunities and problems by making these products available to others.
So you're a tech company that has a content business, a content company that has
it.
a tech business, both?
Yes to all of the above. And both parts are equally important in terms of being successful for us and for scaling our business. My tagline that I always use is quality at scale. That's what we're trying to achieve. And in order to scale, you need to have talent and you need to have technology, and that's what Vox Media is built on.
A lot of people frame the challenges with journalism as outside forces, even if those outside forces are just a disrupted marketplace or just shift in how audiences are getting their news or whatever, as really what's challenging and killing journalism. And I might argue that there's a lot of inside forces, that journalism is often shooting itself in the foot. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Everyone wants to be successful, but yes, I would. And I think it being a time of change, some entities tend to retreat as opposed to advance. They tend to become more closed-minded in the stories that they tell. They tend to try to save money rather than invest it. And I understand those impulses. They're natural impulses. But I think it could lead to things being masked as journalism that are not really journalism, that are kind of entertainment or incendiary. You know, particularly in an age where you have social platforms that might reward outrage. There might be a contest in, quote, journalistic entities to provoke outrage, to get the social media hit and fix, or to get a ratings bump because of the cycle that we live in. And so I think you see a lot of that. Having said that, there's also a lot of great institutions doing great work as well, of course.
The New York Times sort of sniffed, I think, in one article where they described you as almost like a tech company, you know, and you could...
I love it.
Why do you love that? You don't see them as competitor, you don't see them as...
The New York Times?
Yeah.
I suppose, you know, we compete, but we also partner on things, and we also are united in a commitment to quality journalism at a time where it's more important than ever. So I have deep admiration for the New York Times. In fact, you know, a lot of their reporters used to work for us, and some of our reporters used to work there, and we're proud to have them. And but they're an outstanding institution. When they call us a tech company, I'd imagine. You know, they're trying to be a tech company as well, and because it's essential in order to be successful that you either invest in the tech yourself or you partner with companies like Vox Media to make sure that you have the tech that you need to be successful. Explainer
journalism, which I think has been probably the piece of Vox that I pay most attention to and that I really enjoy, is very different than what most people are doing. I mean, we've tried to do it. I do a Sunday morning show that tries to do a similar thing. Remove the screaming people, right? And just get to the heart of an issue without everybody yelling at each other. It's very different than, I think, most of what's being offered.
Well, it is, and I know you're here to interview me, but I do want to give you props for all the great work that Starfish, your company, is doing. And we were talking backstage, and in researching you a bunch, you know, what you're doing is kind of a mini version of what we're doing, and kudos to you for doing it with 900 fewer people than we do it. But we're just a little bit bigger, and doing it across multiple platforms like you are.
But I think the yelling thing is seen as that's where journalism is going, and that sells, and it works, and conflict is an important element, and that's what drives viewership. Your explainers, which now are Netflix too, they're not conflictual, they're the opposite. And the voices sometimes could almost put you to sleep. They're so calm and comforting.
Well, you know, again, to back up all Vox Media, I'll get to your question on explainers, which are critical success, but I'll back up by saying a big part of what we do across all of our brands is what I'll call service work too, service journalism, service applications, and I'll use the Eater brand as an example. If you don't all use Eater heat maps when you go to a new city, or even if you're all in Austin now, so go to Eater and check out the heat maps. You'll get the best barbecue, you get the best tacos, you get the best expensive restaurants, the best food trucks as well, in most big cities as well. That's a great example of taking our journalism in the case of Eater and applying it to technology to help audiences. In the case of Vox, our news brand, which was started by Melissa Bell and Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias, they had a commitment since the beginning to help explain the news. And the theory being there is so much coming at us, so much social media, so much on cable, et cetera, that we need to like back up and use this medium for what can be done well, which was provide context to topics. And we started doing that from the very beginning in video. Of course, we also do it in interactive, we do it in text, and we notably now do it in podcasts with Today Explained, with The Weeds, with the Ezra Klein Show, Worldly, bunch of them. Go to Vox Media Podcast Network, just Google it. You can find them all for yourself. But what it all has in common is helping to provide context at a time where it's sorely needed. And yes, to kind of look through the rhetoric and the shouting, to also go deeper on things that matter in our lives. One of our most talented journalists, and we have so many of them, but one that I'll point out is Sarah Cliff, who really is the preeminent healthcare reporter in the country today. And the work that she and her team are able to accomplish is a wonderful example of when you focus on what matters, what is impacting people's lives every day, as opposed to focusing on the outrage of the day and the shouting of the day. Look right through that, use that as context, of course, it's happening, we're not denying it, but get to what matters in people's lives. Yesterday, our team from the Weeds had Julian Castro on stage, and they weren't asking him about, what do you think about that thing that Trump shouted yesterday or whatever? They were asking him about housing policy, about immigration policy, about what he's a candidate for president, about what he would do were he president to change things. And they know their stuff. And he knew his stuff when it came to those things too. And it made for a really important and intelligent discourse.
Can you shift? I mean, because that's not the standard conversation that if Julian went to sit down with almost any news organization on a TV platform, whether it was cable or broadcast, I am confident, 99% confident, that is not the conversation they would have. Here's how it would start. It would begin with,
I agree.
President Trump this morning tweeted such and such. How do you respond to that, right? Because that's the way that goes. Do you think this strategy of really digging into the context can move the needle for other news organizations? Can you show them the way to go?
I think it can. I think it should. I think, by the way, there are plenty of organizations doing this. I'm not here to say we're the only ones. I mean, we learn every day from other ones. There's particularly great work being done in local media that doesn't get enough attention. There's great work being done by investigative units, by ProPublica, like by other groups too. I think what we're able to do, again, is find scale in that work, and that is important. Like, there's a lot of companies that go after scale for scale's sake. They chase algorithms, they kind of work, and that leads you to a road that ignores the quality part of my quality at scale equation. So in pursuing that scale, I think we're able to not only do great work ourselves, but able to be an enabler of other organizations that are looking to do great work too, again, through these technology and monetization solutions. We're inspired by others. Hopefully we can help inspire others as well.
How do you think about your audience? Who do you want in your audience?
We really want everyone to be our audience.
People always say that, but they really have a demo that they're often going for, right? People say, yes, we want, but people don't want 65 plus, they don't, often.
Fair enough. I think, you don't catch me using like the millennial word because I think that's like a marketing term that I think is a little offensive to human beings to like clump them into a segment. But I do think our brands naturally attract, we're a new generation. We're a company that was born in the past decade. We program in new ways, tell stories in new, fresh ways. I've had 65-year-olds come up to me and praise us. My daughter, who is in the audience, I went to her debate team competition, and people were citing, 14-year-olds were citing Vox there. And so we've run the gamut. I think what they all have in common are people who are modern audiences, meaning they consume content in modern ways, whether that's OTT, podcasts, websites, YouTube, et cetera. But they're also audiences that have curiosity and want to go deeper into topics, care about topics, are passionate about topics. Those topics might be the Texas Longhorns. Those topics might be the latest Fortnite update, or those topics might be Kara Swisher taking on the tech platforms and holding them to account. But whatever it is that you're passionate about, Vox Media is there for you and working with you to help inform you, and I think that's what unites our audience.
There's a question that I want to bring to you because I think this is a second piece of that. Media brands are increasingly turning to live events to support their business models. How do live events fit into this strategy of programming in new ways?
Thank you for asking that question because I rattled off our business model and I left off live events, and shame on me for doing that. We have one of the, I think maybe the most successful live event certainly in the technology industry with our Code conference that was started by Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg and Peter Kafka. and it's become their preeminent tech industry conference. We'll be having another one this year in June. And that is a crown jewel. We also program other events with our Recode brand, Code Media, Code Commerce with Jason Del Rey. But outside of the Code brand, we're doing more things. We're doing live podcasts. We have set up here in Austin, and yesterday I mentioned the Julian one, but we're having sports podcasts. We're having musicians come through, great chefs come through. All of our brands are participating. We're partners with Bill Simmons' group, The Ringer, and they're going to be doing some live podcasts there as well. And then we have other great events like the Eater Young Guns that celebrate young and diverse chefs from across the country and increasingly across the world. So events are a bigger part of it. Sometimes they're ticketed, sometimes they're advertising supported. But not only is it a way to help augment the business model, but it's a way to create interaction in real life, which is so important to the experience that we're trying to create. And you'll see us do more and more of that. The other business model thing, which I didn't touch on, and I'll make a little bit of news here on the stage, is that we're going to be embracing a membership model as well. And I think you'll see later on this year, we haven't picked a date yet, but later on this year, Vox Media will start to introduce membership tiers. And we'll be...
And how will you decide what members get what?
The first order for us is we're not going to take away anything that you're already getting. So one of the brands that will be participating is our Vox News brand. And the idea is let's add value to the Vox audience that really loves us. Let's give them more as a premium tier. Let's give them more content. Let's give them more access to our team through technology. Let's give them more access to live events that they might get first in line to buy a ticket for, or something like that, or discounted things, merchandise, whatever it is, we can offer them more. So I think you'll see that happen with our Vox brand. You'll probably see it happen with our Verge and SB Nation brands over time. We're still defining those packages. That's why we haven't launched them yet. But we think that can be an important part of the mix too. Again, with the goal of being not taking away anything that our audiences have, but adding value to the experience that's worth paying for. And we find a lot of people want to pay. They want to support us in different ways. They want to go deeper with us, and we're happy to do that. And in doing this, by bringing together a membership subscription model, a very robust premium advertising model, a content licensing model, a technology licensing model, we're able to have a really robust overall foundation that sets the path for future growth and provides a firm foundation for the journalism and storytelling that we want to do.
Talk about some partnerships. We mentioned a little bit of Netflix, and I always understand why everybody wants to partner with Netflix, because I think people think of Netflix as carrying around a big giant bag of money and just handing it out to people who have something they want to create and
hand it to you because you're great at what you do, but not everyone.
But I think they also really seem to appreciate high quality, and I think if you can sort of meet Netflix at that place, then you can create something for them. But you also have a partnership with PBS and Eater. Why PBS? I would not have picked that for you.
We want to partner with organizations that are committed to quality storytelling for modern audiences. And PBS, I understand where you're going with it. I mean, you don't
the older audience. I mean, you don't think about new modern media and PBS in the same sentence.
I think, I forget who approached, I think they may have approached us. We approached one another. And they have a commitment to programming for everyone too. What you're mentioning is our No Passport Required show with Marcus Samuelsson and our Eater brand, which has been an enormous success. It was renewed for a second year. Everyone should watch it. Marcus travels to different cities across America, diving deep into immigrant food culture and immigrant culture, generally speaking, with food as the gateway. And it's outstanding, and it's everything that we value at Vox Media, amazing storytelling. It happens to be like really well paired with PBS's mission of telling these kinds of stories. PBS also, you're right, I think they were looking to get younger, get more modern, and for us it was a great pairing. Other stories are better told on other platforms. You mentioned our partnership with Netflix, where we do something that was really unique for Netflix at the time, still is, shorter form programming, 15-minute or 20-minute segments. That show's called Explained, where we go deeper and use explanatory journalism to tell stories about everything from racial income gap inequality to K-pop on that platform. And it's just been a home run with audiences and for us and for Netflix. So we'll work where it's done. And I think the bigger point is, from a business perspective, is that there is a great economic opportunity here that we're pursuing, but it's all rooted in us telling stories, leveraging intellectual property, creating technology. We're not going off, I joke with my team, like, we're not trying to do something that is unrelated as we grow our business. We're not doing self-driving cars, for instance. What we are doing...
Yet.
Yeah, no, we're not going to, unless there's a good screen in that car, we'll be on that screen. But, but what we are doing is starting with journalism and storytelling, creating technology to support that, and then finding every conceivable opportunity to get those stories and that technology in front of organizations that value them, with our one bar being quality. And that's what we're committed to.
Does the model have to change for free TV? I mean, your partnership with PBS, there is a fee if you want to watch the, I mean, it could be as low as $1 or something.
Yeah.
People get to opt in. I'm sure if someone said, I have 5 cents, and that would be kind of the bar. But still, it is very antithetical to the PBS model, which is always everything that they do for free all the time. Are you changing that model and saying, listen, this is really not sustainable to do high quality work?
Well, you know, fairness, it's free at first. It's on broadcast, and you can, you know, if you have an antenna, you can get it, or if you have an access to the internet, you can get it. And then I think what you're referring to is, yeah, we just discovered they put it behind a paywall over time as part of their business model to support their programming. That's fine. I think generally speaking, as an organization, we know great content has to be supported, not only through advertising, but through subscription. PBS needs to support it. We need to support it. What we're also committed to is access to that too. So what you'll see more of is windowing, where there is free options, but then there are also paywall options over time as well. I think we'll experiment with those things. We're proud to provide the vast majority of our content, I mean 99.99% of it, to anyone who has an internet connection. And we'll continue to provide that. We're proud to be able to do that. And we're proud to be able to do that in a way that is supported by premium advertising that doesn't seek to leverage your personal data in inappropriate ways. And we'll continue to do that. But we also support other models as well that can balance open access to information with the ability to fund that information in premium ways.
How do you think about your creators, the diversity of your creators, the IP that they bring to you? There's a question here, and I'm going to add this to that list. What's been the greatest challenge for Vox Creative? What advice would you give companies trying to shift toward a model that's a storytellers at large model?
Greatest challenge for Vox Creative. We work with premium brands, and the best brands want to tell stories that engage compelling audiences around their virtues. I think sometimes there's a struggle between like telling those stories and hard selling the product, you know, and both need to be done. The only reason they want to work with us is ultimately to sell products and to...
I've seen a shift in that over the last, truly, I'd say 5 years, where brands actually, I think, genuinely are embracing a good story and moving away from a good story that has the person holding our product in the middle of it. Have you?
We have, and we're working with more and more brands that really understand that. To do that well, you know, it's a lot easier to measure your click-through rate on a search ad than it is to measure the impact of the work that you do with brands at Starfish or that we do at Vox Media. The ROI calculation, you know, to answer the question, is sometimes the challenge. We work hard to prove that there is strong ROI. We have a lot of different brand surveys that we do. We also kind of measure down the funnel, and the marketers that go deep with us in particular see we have an extraordinarily high renewal rate that is supported by data. and the marketers that work with us, particularly over longer periods of time, where they can actually not just run a campaign for a week or a month or whatever, which could have some impact, but the harder things with those short-term assignments is that you have less ability to iterate and adapt. So the ones that particularly have extraordinary high return with us are the ones that work with us to learn and to grow and to iterate and to find new pockets, to leverage data. And when I talk about data, it's not like your personal data. It's data about what type of content resonates on which platforms at what time of the day, at what week of the year with their audiences.
And how does that end up with creators? I mean, how do you think about that relationship then with the creators in there?
We have a saying internally, again, that we like to be data informed as opposed to data driven. The difference being, if you're data driven, you just go where the algorithm takes you. If you're data informed, you use that information to help your sense of a storyteller to tell better stories, to know what people are interested in, where they are, and make sure that your stories find the right people at the right time. If you're a marketer, you want to leverage those insights. And we have those insights at scale that we can help you leverage to tell better stories that are more relevant to your target market, to your target audience. We have a system that we call creative intelligence that is a data product that helps marketers leverage those insights at scale to tell them everything from what headlines resonate with different, thousands of different segments. To get a little nerdy on you, it allows you as a marketer to create thousands of different creative units, to test those creative units in real time across millions of different audience segments, and then to optimize. And really, if you don't have anything to say that's relevant, none of that really matters. But if you do have things to say, you can do it at scale and target the audiences that matter to you with the messages that matter to them. And that's something that, that we've found to be really helpful. And the more commitment you make into this, the more you can leverage that over time and the more success you'll have. But you have to pair that with outstanding storytelling, which is something that we also help them do. So while I talked about and bragged about the technology, I'll also brag about the storytellers that we have and the unit that Vox Creative has been able to do. We win awards, but more importantly, we drive results for marketers, and that's what we're really focused on.
Are you diverse?
Diverse in terms of our team?
In terms of your creative team, your storytellers, do you intentionally go after those diverse storytellers?
We have to, and that's a perpetual thing that we have to focus on, not only in our Vox Creative unit, but in our company at large. And we learned this lesson early on. We started off like a lot of startups do. I know South by has a lot of startups, and I like to tell this story about we started off as a sports company, which is historically male dominated. We were a bunch of white guys sitting around who loved sports, and we hired some other. We had some engineers, again, historically male thing, and we were just focused on survival to begin with. We wanted to prove that there was like a company worth investing here, a company worth audience here, and we did that successfully. One day we turned around and we noticed that we were, 25 people, 30 people, 50 people, and while we were just hustling and trying to survive and build something, we looked around and we're like, we're not living the values that we believe in here in that quest for survival and grab the first person in our network who we know to help us do something on the ship. And I think was a trap that a lot of companies fall into. And in our case, we, thankfully finally decided to do something about it. And we went from a company that was, like when we were 50 people, we were probably like 75% male, and today we're majority female in both, across the full company and across the management layers as well, and the executive layers as well. Same thing with people of color as well. While we're making progress there, we're not where we need to be, but we're focused on it. Part of how we're focused on it is by measuring it, and you can't improve if you don't measure it, and we make all those details transparent. You can go to our website today and see the details on a annual and quarterly basis on how we have progressed in our journey. But it's not just about recruiting, it's about retaining and providing careers and providing an inclusive environment. And so we adopt things like code of conduct and ways that we can make sure that we can invest in people and help develop their careers as well. And that's an important part. And again, I'm not here
It takes a lot of work, actually. I mean, I do think it has to be a very intentional strategy. I don't think those things ever really happen just one day you look up and you're like, oh, that's amazing. We're so incredibly diverse. I think it's about, I mean, the show that we do, we literally, people say to me, so you count everybody? I'm like, yes. We track every single person who's a guest on our air to make sure that we're not everybody has their bias, that we're not over-indexing in some way that we're just not aware of.
Without the metrics, you're not going to have any improvement. So that's one part. But it's also about, it's about how you get there and the environment that you try to create. And I'm not here to say that we do it perfectly. I am here to say that we're committed to building a better future, we're committed to getting it right, and that's an ongoing thing and something we'll continue to work on.
You seem to have a strategy that's platform agnostic, that the IP must live across as many platforms as possible to really make it sort of financially worth it.
We do. It's an old. We have the privilege of being able to tell stories across multiple platforms. Audio, for instance, is just booming for us. We have the Vox Media podcast network that has over 75 different podcasts across categories. Some that are home runs, biggest in their category, like Kara Swisher's Recode Decode, or like Vox's The Weeds or the Ezra Klein Show. But something for everyone on down the spectrum across all these categories that we operate in. But then we work with the social platforms too, and different platforms offer different things. I think some are better than others. Some platforms have more of a commitment to news than others that we're finding over time. I think Facebook is a platform that has successfully committed to making news publishers less relevant.
Run away.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and they're not denying that. Like, they came out, I think now over a year ago, maybe 2 years, and saying like, we're gonna dial down news in our algorithm, and we're going to, we're gonna kind of retreat. They got, I think, frightened by what they were seeing, or somehow they didn't want to make that commitment. And they commit in other ways, by the way. We have a great partnership with them around a show that we do called Consider It with Liz Plank, which we're really proud of, and they're a committed partner. But I think as it relates to just supporting the news ecosystem generally, whether it's through surfacing it or helping to monetize it, it's something they've shown less interest in doing, and something that they're less committed to.
So to exist across multiple platforms means you're not left, as some people were, high and dry when Facebook changes its video strategy, for example.
That's right. That's right. We invested somewhat, unlike other companies in our space and other peers in our space. We never went all in on that. We experimented. We had to retreat from it too. In fact, we had to let go some talented people a couple of years ago when we realized that wasn't going to work for us. But generally speaking, we are committed to diversifying across platforms. But there are certain ones where we're just not going to make the effort if it's not being reciprocated. I think we have great relationships with Google. Google has shown more of a commitment to news. They certainly haven't figured it out. I don't think they would say that they have, but they are working on it. They have the Google News Initiative across YouTube, across search and the other platforms. They take the time to listen. They take the time to try to provide different business model opportunities. They're not going to be a savior for journalism. They don't claim to be, but they do want to make the effort to work. And I think their incentives are aligned with it. Ultimately, none of these companies want to do things just for the sake of it. I wouldn't even go so far as they're doing it for the good of democracy. They're doing it for the good of their business models, but journalism could be good for their business model and is good for their business model. It creates habitual use on their platforms, engagement on their platforms. It provides the credibility that helps enhance their platforms. And if you're Google and you're committed to an open ecosystem, an open web architecture, having quality information and distinguishing quality, credible information from fake information, and specious information is essential to your business model. If you're more of a closed system, it might be less essential. You might be more about messaging and sharing funny memes and that kind of stuff. And great, if that's what your thing is, great. And as a company is running this company, I have to know the difference. Our team has to know the difference, and we have to know where we should invest and who is truly committed to journalism, both in terms of promoting it and monetizing it, and who is not. And we're going to focus our investments there.
Let's take some of these questions. You've proven ways to monetize much of your content on your site, but podcasts, which you were just talking about, how do you bring true monetization to podcasts? I mean, you mentioned, I think, 75 podcasts. How do you actually make sure that that's funded, and what can people take from that?
Well, fortunately, podcasting is, it's still it's small market relative to other forms of advertising, but it's growing considerably faster. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think one of the reasons why it works so well, and most people listen to this, probably listen to podcasts, and that it's a very intimate connection where distraction is voided out by the fact that you literally have someone talking into your ear. The other thing is, creatively, most talent is really supportive of it. And so to have Kara Swisher or Matt Iglesias doing the live reads and the podcast is a really effective creative format, one that even though you can hit that skip button, you usually don't, because it's really kind of, they make it interesting and they make it fun and it's kind of compelling, and you want to support that. And so it actually works really well as a business model. You then have to have a sales infrastructure to support that. And since we've been able to scale and we're talking to all the biggest brand marketers, they might be podcast curious. They want to experiment. We can bring them in. We already have those relationships.
Relatively low cost of entry compared to launching a show.
That's right. That's right. And again, they can trust us. We have brands that they trust, brand safe environments. And so, that's been really successful for us, leveraging, we're not just off trying to sell you a podcast. We can provide it in a package of marketing that makes sense for you, and with podcasts being part of it as well.
Is it possible to support local news journalism without national scale?
It's increasingly difficult, and the biggest problem facing journalism is, in my opinion, the health and success of local news, and I'm not the first to say that. We want to try to do our part. I think our Chorus platform, which is again our kind of content platform for technology, and then also our monetization platform in concert, can help be parts of those solutions. But I think generally speaking, there's obvious pressure on local media rather than dwell on the problem, try to look for where we can help provide solutions. We're not going to be able to be the sole solution, but I think companies like ours that can provide technology and monetization layers, combined with also the bigger platforms, the Facebooks and the Googles of the world helping out as well. I think there's opportunity there if we can come in with alleviate the pressures of technology spend and confusion and the pressures of monetization to some degree. I become more optimistic, but we're a long way away from that, and there's a lot of work to be done to get to a place where we can have a robust, healthy local media landscape. Which is
interesting, because I think people trust local media far more than national media. People are interested in micro media, in their news stories kind of down the street in their neighborhood. I think there's actually a need and an interest and a want for the content, and a love for the content. And a trust of the content.
It's back to that demand thing. The demand is there for sure.
Just the financials are killing it.
Financials, and then that hurts the supply, and then the demand decreases. And I've heard people say oh, there's less interest in local news because everyone just cares about national politics in the era of this administration. And I don't buy into that. There's the outrage that we talked about, but people care deeply about their local communities, and local is where we live. And we have a brand called Curbed that is very focused on local neighborhoods. There's a Curbed Austin. There's, if you live in a city, there's bound to be a Curbed for you. Eater is also local, focused on food, and SB Nation, of course, was built from the ground up covering local sports teams. And so we believe in local, and we have a system and an architecture to help support local. I mentioned our chorus partners are increasingly local, whether it's Chicago Sun-Times or Deseret News, and we're committed to that as well, too. So we believe in local. Local is a big part of our platform, and we want to be more committed to it.
Do you think producing your own content is the only way, or could Vox also do a curation of quality journalism by others, giving the Vox stamp of approval to other non-Vox entities?
There are different forms of curation. You know, one way to curate is through advertising. I didn't talk much about this concert I'll talk about it in a second because I think it's relative to curation. So Concert is our premium advertising marketplace, and it is a curation of premium quality content. We go out to the marketers and we say, hey, you want scale, but you want quality at scale. So we go, and then we go out to publishing partners ranging from Rolling Stone magazine to New York magazine to Quartz, and we partner with them to get scale, but get scale with quality, as opposed to who knows what the heck you're going to get in your news feed, or who knows what you're going to get on your random video channel or YouTube channel. So that is a curation of premium quality publishers that, when combined, has real scale that marketers need and want. It also has the brand safety. It also has the performance. So when you talk about curation, that is a form of curation. Curation on behalf of marketers that want quality, adjacency, and performance. Curation on behalf of publishers that need premium, high CPM, high pricing rate monetization. That's curation. So yes, I believe in it, and we are doing that both with our concert program for monetization and with our chorus program for providing technology. We don't invite just anyone into that. We have a vetting process. We understand what you're up to. We look at, are you accredited by certain organizations? Are you brand safe content? Are you licensing? Are you stealing intellectual property or not? And we invite you on. So I believe in curation as well. The internet is about curation. We just want to do it in premium quality ways that work for our business partners and work for our audiences.
Here's a question for me, but I think we should both answer it. Soledad, can you give examples of how journalism has shot itself in the foot? How does journalism today balance disseminating the truth versus monetization? I would say the most recent example I can think of was watching Jerome Corsi have a lot of airtime on CNN. I mean, he's a conspiracy theorist, and it was a pre-taped interview. And I remember thinking, CNN's giving a platform to a conspiracy theorist, and it's pre-taped, so you didn't have to. It's not like he took over the interview and it just went crazy, and that certainly has happened in some interviews I've done. But I'm always so curious. It's hard to argue that you're credible and you focus on facts, and it's all about the facts, when you also simultaneously give a platform to someone who's a conspiracy theorist to talk about Seth Rich and birtherism for a solid 4.5 minutes. That to me seems an example of where, in an effort to have something that's flashy and something that people are going to talk about and tweet about, you undercut a valued brand of thoughtful conversation. Yeah,
and again, I'll give you credit. The work that you do with Starfish is often, certainly for its time slots and maybe in general, driving higher viewership and higher ratings than a lot of these other shows because people want that quality. And well,
I think there is a myth that crazy sells, and I know there's conversations about it that crazy sells, and I actually think quality does sell. It sounds insane to have to defend that, but I think you see it in what you do. Quality sells to advertisers, it sells to viewers, and it burnishes the brand every single time.
I don't think I'd be up here on the stage in the honor of being in your presence if that weren't true.
More. Are we recording?
No, and this audience's presence if that weren't true. I think the big question is can you create viable and sustainable and profitable businesses from this? And the answer is you can. You need to pair that quality with scale. You need to have a commitment to do it day in, day out. You have to do it the right way. You have to focus on having the right culture. You have to focus on having the right business models, the right partners, and you have to live that commitment day in, day out. It's not a magic thing. I think when the internet sprung up, you saw there were companies that thought that they could take shortcuts. And yes, technology plays a vital role, as we've discussed up here, but technology that isn't paired with quality, commitment to quality journalism, commitment to quality storytelling, is not going to get you anywhere, but is not going to sustain you. At the same time, it's hard if you're small in this world. It's hard in a world that chases scale to create the economic opportunity to support quality work. And that's why, in our case, we're committed to both.
Question that I think plays off of that. Recently, there have been many high-profile layoff rounds in digital and print media. You guys had a layoff back in February of last year.
That's right. That was with our a lot of social video.
But asking the question, is there really a demand for journalism, and how do we flip this disconnect? Someone described for me yesterday, they said it's a whitewater world, meaning it's chaotic, it's treacherous, it's a little bit scary, you have to be agile, you have to really, you don't exactly know where change is coming from at any moment, and it's a bit different than the waters we've been riding in the past.
I'd be careful about the question and I've heard this a lot, it's not just this question, it kind of conflates layoffs with a few companies. They tend to say digital companies, because there have been a few in the news lately, but like yesterday I woke up and read that Disney and Fox are going to lay off 5,000 people as part of their merger. And unfortunately, I read that Gannett is laying off people. And I read that Thomson Reuters is laying off people. And I read that Viacom and CBS are laying off.
Right, I think that's the point. So doesn't that tell us that journalism is treacherous and in collapse?
Perhaps that is the point, but it's not necessarily about journalism. And it's certainly not about kind of quote unquote digital media companies. It's meaning, I think, the new generation of media companies that have sprung up. It is about all of media, and it is about the disruption that I talked about at the beginning of our discussion. And so it's a very fair question, and everything that we've been talking about for the past hour, I think I was articulating our approach to how you navigate that and continue to do quality work. But I bring it up because there is this, I know because I get interviewed about it all the time, is there how much doom and gloom is there for journalism? It's how you started this conversation. And there is big disruption going on in media, again, caused by the fact that we're all consuming things differently. It's monetized in different ways. There are tech platforms, Google, Facebook, I'll name them, that have disorder. We all know about the power that they have in the advertising and discovery worlds. All those things are true.
You don't read that as doom and gloom?
I read that as we have to work hard every day to figure things out. And I've articulated how Vox Media is trying to figure it out for ourselves and being successful in that voyage, and how we're also trying to help other companies and empower them to figure it out. And yes, I'm optimistic that it can be, but it's not easy. It's a grind. I have gray hair, and our team works hard every day to make sure that we can help get the future right for media. We're committed to getting the future right for media. That's what Vox Media is. And so again, I'm optimistic, and I'm not blindly optimistic. We wake up and work hard. We have to manage expenses carefully. We have to grow our revenues in smart and diverse ways. But at the foundation of it all is this storytelling and everything that we can create off of that storytelling. Technology to enable that storytelling, business models to enable that storytelling, and telling those stories everywhere that modern audiences want to consume them. And so, of course, I'm optimistic. We're kind of ending the way we began with that question.
Which I appreciate. Very rarely does my interviewee take us full circle. I often have to kind of get us there. But we are exactly ending that way. I mean, in spite of, and those layoffs, listen, those are my friends who are being laid off, and people you know who are being laid off, so it's painful. But it sounds like you're saying that's not exhibit A of an industry in free fall. There is another model that works.
It's an industry in dramatic disruption and painful disruption, particularly painful for people that lose their jobs, and particularly painful for audiences and consumers of local media, as we just discussed. But it's a disruptive time, and born of that disruption are new ways of doing business and new opportunities to tell stories in incredibly brilliant new ways. Podcasting we didn't have at this scale years ago. Explain videos with our own YouTube channel, having, serving subscribers of tens of millions of people we didn't have years ago. So as an audience member, for people who want these stories, it's never been a better time, and we're so privileged and so proud to be able to serve those audiences and those curious audiences every day. So that's a reason to be optimistic. I think we're talking about the business model, though, and the business model is going through transition, absolutely, but we're also proud and privileged to be able to help get that business model right to support local and overall journalism on a national scale, to support talented storytellers and enable them, whether they work for Vox Media or they work elsewhere. That's our mission, that's our goal, and that's what we set out to do every day.
It's a good way to end. Jim Bankoff, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. You bet.
Thank you, Soledad.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks a ton.